Okay, here's the 3-month update of the garden. Everything is actually doing fantastic. I'm not too sure if the string method will work in the end, but as of now, I've been pruning pretty heavily, fertilizing actually a lot more than I normally would, almost to a fault. I did have some burning on the leaves from it, so I had to cut back on that, but overall, this is the best it's ever looked for me. I have in total 42 tomato plants, and every single one is thriving. I'm generally in shock. I never thought I'd have this kind of garden in Arizona. So I did get the plants in the second week of February, and now we are basically in the first week of March. And I would say that most plants have about tripled in size since I put them in the ground. They look small in the camera for some reason, but they are quite large. I do have quite a bit of fruit, but I am tempted to start cutting the fruit off to focus a little more on height versus fruiting. The fertilizer I do use is really meant for fruiting. It's a 5-18-38, I believe, which I offset with some ammonium citrate, I believe, which is a 1500, and then Epsom salt. So that could be the cause of it, but honestly, that's a good problem to have. You can see here that everything is doing quite well. I have almost every plant on a single stalk. I've been pretty good about cutting everything back, trimming, keeping the suckers out. I did allow a couple suckers to grow to allow them to branch. I think I chose the first sucker above the first flower, if I think I did that right. But otherwise, everything is single plant. You'll see there are a couple that were actually two plants growing from the same pot when I bought them. These are the Home Depot ones actually, or some nursery where they had two separate plants in there, and I didn't bother pulling them out. I just have them growing separate and keeping them trimmed so they don't touch each other. So it's not one plant being split into two and sharing nutrients, it's two separate ones. They get a little more water, they get a little more fertilizer to offset the fact that there's two separate root balls in there. And you can see in this one, these are doing extremely well actually. I think I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tomato plants in here. In another video, I'll go through and show you every variety that I have. This one right here is Sun Gold on the edge. It's hard to tell because it is starting to blend in with the big boy in the middle. I'm gonna have to cut that back a little bit, or actually I'm gonna have to stake it, string it a little bit differently to get the weight off it. It is getting crushed, just noticed that. On this side, same thing, I have a lot more room here. These actually planted last, so they are a little bit behind. It also was very shaded here from those trees, but I spent 2 full weekends cutting the crap out of those, and now I must have increased the light at least 2 or 3-fold because of it. And so you'll see the lights I have there. I did those originally because I was trying to add more sunlight because of the shade. But at this point, it's probably not necessary, but I guess it can't hurt. I only run those lights during the daytime. It is a string light, which I bought from Amazon. I will put a link to it in the description for the video. I think it costs about 60 bucks with the bulbs. Been very, very happy with it. But yeah, it may not be necessary anymore, but you know, can't hurt. Obviously when summer comes into play and the sun goes a little higher, there'll be a lot less shade and a lot more heat. At that point I will take it down. I got these in the ground last. In the back 3 along the edge are cucumbers. I have them also growing with the same kind of trellis method with the string and the J-hooks. But they're not quite tall enough to really take advantage, but I have noticed they have double or tripled in size in the past week and a half. And the 2 front ones are zucchinis and an eggplant in the middle there. The zucchinis, I'm gonna grow them upward best I can. Obviously they're not really vining plants, but I'm going to attach them to the pole and just kind of have them go up versus have them spread out and take over the entire planter. Over here, I have the artichoke. Never grown artichoke before. My first one, kind of excited about this. And then here we have more zucchini and some varieties of squash, as well as a watermelon, which I planted in the remains of my old composting bin. I lost a lid for it. One of the ball ones they roll around, which looks cool, but not very practical, having to roll around a 100-pound ball of dirt. So I just took off the top half of the circle and made an inverted dome, and I planted the watermelon directly in the compost. I know it's probably not the best idea, but so far it seems to be doing pretty good, and I am happy that it has its own space because they will get gigantic. Also, when it gets kind of hot, I can have the watermelon trail underneath this. Is it kumquat? No, it's a lime tree. So overall, yeah, let me find a tomato actually. Tomatillos are starting to come in. Here we go. This I believe is an early girl, which is always going to be the first to fruit. I think they mature in about 60 days. Grow very well in Arizona. You can see it right there too. It's about the size of a, I don't know, enlarged golf ball at this point. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. And you'll see, actually you can see one of the suckers here that I left. Where is it? I just cut that guy off today. There was one more somewhere. Here we go. Here's a good example here. This big boy right here. And it's quite large, and actually there are flowers on it now too, which is why I'm afraid to cut it. I'm not really afraid, I just kind of feel bad cutting it at this point, but I think I probably will cut it tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not too worried about this plant not fruiting enough. The early girls aren't really giant producers, but I have such a huge head start. I mean, we're in March, and I already have fruiting tomato plants that are, I mean, if this were to be straightened out, I would say it's 3 feet tall at this point. When I bought it, it was maybe 8 inches, so they have grown like crazy. Even the little guys, you'll see right there, what is that variety? Let me walk around. That is a Sweet 100. Oh yeah, that's going to be probably the best producer I will have this year, and actually every year for that matter. Sweet 100s are amazing. They can handle the heat, you know, as good as any plant can in Arizona. It will stop fruiting, but I'll probably make it through June with that one. And these things are just prolific in Arizona, so that'll give me hundreds, if not more, tomatoes when it's at its peak. And then here I have my peppers. I do have a few small, this is like a dwarf bell pepper, but for the most part they are just kind of early. They grow a little bit smaller. I don't expect to get much out of these until probably end of summertime. I had the trellis lower here because these ones I do plan on keeping alive, so I'm going to drape shade cloth over it and probably put a box fan at the end to blow through and keep this guy as cool as possible while still giving as much light as possible. But overall, the different species. I do have a scorpion butch tea. So this is one of the bad boys. It used to be the hottest pepper in the world, but I think it's been beat by the Carolina Reaper, maybe one other one. But I can't find those locally, and I can find this one. So I'm kind of over my days of super spicy peppers. So it's more just a novelty. You know, I may try it, but maybe dilute it into some salsa versus actually using it for anything meaningful. And then over here, I did add some lettuce. This is romaine. I have green and red. Lettuce isn't really a summer plant here. Actually, it's not in Arizona, but because this is the shadiest part, you can see there's shade over almost all this, especially now in the late spring, early summer, where you have the sun is more south. This part gets a lot of shade, and the lettuce is doing quite well. I did plant the red romaine a lot later, so I think I had the yellow or the green been in the ground for a week, and the red is maybe 2 days old. My basil didn't make it, and that's because there's not enough sun here. I'll find a separate pot for it. And then cilantro is actually doing quite well. There are 5 plants there, and I need to start trimming it here soon. Overall, I'm very happy with the progress. So expect more videos. I'm actually starting to put together ones on how I prune, how I set up the trellis, how I did the J-hooks, how I do my fertilizer. I could not find a single video on how to properly use Masterblend, which is that fertilizer I mentioned in dirt gardening. It's primarily used for hydroponics, but I couldn't find a single video anywhere that walked through how much to use. So I'm doing a bit trial and error. I am following the manufacturer's instructions, but it doesn't say how often to fertilize. And I've read everywhere from once every 2 or 3 weeks to people saying to do it every single time you water, which seems a lot. But I'm trying different intervals, and I am kind of pulling it back a little bit. And I think I've reached a happy spot. Let's see if I can find some of the burns. You'll see some of the leaves have some burns. I don't know if you can see that there, but those started appearing when I started increasing the frequency of fertilization. So I cut that back. Everything seems to be recovered quite well. We did have a frost, or almost frost, about a week ago, and I didn't really have the chance to cover it because it is a bit of an endeavor to cover these giant trellises. I can't just put a cover over the plants because of the strings, and I took a risk and nothing happened to it, so I was happy with that. I think we are past at this point all the frost. It is going to drop into the 60s and low 70s next week, which means nights will be probably 40s, which is totally fine. But for the most part, today is a nice sunny 86, and they are thriving right now. So very happy.